This podcast has been produced on the traditional lands of the Gadigal and Bidjigal peoples. From 2RPH and the Wicking Trust, this is Passing Thoughts. I'm Rob Kaldor. This is the podcast series where we explore death, dying, and everything in between. Welcome to Series 3. If you haven't had a chance to listen to Series 1 or 2, we've already made 20 episodes covering a wide range of topics. We'd love you to go back and have a listen. They're available on all your favourite podcast apps. Today's episode is a special one. I recorded this Passing Thoughts episode live in front of an audience. It coincided with the launch of Oliver Christen's book, As She Chose. A big thank you to Better Read Than Dead bookstore in Newtown for hosting this event. You'll hear my conversation with Oliver, whose book chronicles his mother's final weeks after she chose to end her life through VSED. VSED, or voluntary stopping eating and drinking, is the deliberate decision by a mentally capable person to refuse all food and fluids with the primary intention of hastening death. I start by asking Oliver to lie on the couch. Oliver, tell me about your mother.
Well, my mum was the oldest of 5 kids. They were all born during the Second World War. They grew up on the border, on the Czech border. So she's experienced the whole war. They escaped from the Russians. They escaped from Eastern Germany until she ended up in Switzerland as a young doctor, where she treated a very, very difficult patient. And that difficult patient happened to be my dad's mum. She's a very active, very lively, funny, entertaining person. She never wanted to be a doctor, she wanted to be a teacher, and she ended up teaching nurses. She loved nature, loved being in nature, loved hiking, swimming, anything you can imagine. And as a doctor, she knew her body extremely well. She knew plants really well, she knew animals, she knew birds, she was a cat whisperer. She was awesome. She loved to have a family. She always wanted to have a large family, but really struggled to have a large family.
So what was it like growing up with her as a mother?
She's always had our back. I haven't always been close to mum because she had to go to hospital to have a second child and be in hospital for the whole pregnancy, and I was given away. So I didn't take that too well. And so for a long time I pushed her away, but it was really fun having her because we were out in nature, we were out doing sports, we were very active. So that part was really fun. But our relationship wasn't always that close. And in terms of that's part of the journey. Because initially I didn't want to write about it. I thought I'll just do the next thing that is called for in terms of mum's journey to help her have the end that she wants. But friends were so blown away by this whole journey that they said, you have to write about this. And because I had a daily log of exchanges with the yogi, I could reconstruct what happened in those 24 days. And I just wrote about that, and that was quite easy.
You've spoken about her life, but when did she find out about that she was in a situation where life wasn't going to go much further?
She communicated that to me early in December, a couple of years ago, and just sat down and said, I think it's time that I call EXIT. Now, for those of you who don't know, EXIT is an organization in Switzerland that helps with what you call here VAD, as in voluntary assisted dying. And she had been a member of that organization for about 15 years. So we always knew that once she felt she didn't have quality of life she wanted to have anymore, once she couldn't be independent anymore, that she would make that choice. That was always clear to us. Personally, I also thought from about 5 months prior to that I'd seen how her strength had waned and how she was working less and less in the garden and saying, oh, I can't do this anymore. Can we delegate that out? Can we do this? And so I could see it coming. I wasn't surprised when it came, and still, when it comes for the first time, it's real. And so she said, this is what I want to do. Would you support me? And I said, I will support whatever choice you want to make, and I have to also tell you that I personally would not make that choice.
That must have been incredibly challenging.
We've had a lot of conversations, and she said a number of times, I feel like I only get to know you now. And so we've had a lot of these kind of conversations.
How did people around her react to it when it came out? What was the reaction of family, friends?
Well, she didn't share it with friends. She shared it with the family. That was really important to her, and I think it's one of the criteria that is important before beginning a death fast. That all of your next of kin are aware why you're choosing what you're choosing, and that they are supportive of that choice. You know, sometimes I hear people talk about their story and they say, we have 4 siblings and 2 of them were really supportive and 2 of them were hanging on for dear life, and it's just like, no, there's no way. We have to do whatever we can to keep the person alive. And that creates conflict, not just within the siblings, but it also creates conflict for the person that wants to leave. It's holding them back. And so in that sense, it's really important that your environment knows, understands, and is supportive of the choice and gives their blessing. So we could do that. And because I shared that with my family and the kids, they already knew by the time, but she wanted to communicate with the kids as well. So she talked to them and explained why. And she explained it, in a way she explained it 3 times. She had to say goodbye to the kids several times because that wasn't so easy.
The concept of a death fast, I hadn't heard of it with regards to humans. I knew that animals at the end of life will stop eating. Tell me about a death fast.
It's funny, death fast is the term in English. In German there's a word, it's actually called the dying fast. So it's slightly different. And the acronym in Australia is VSED. D stands for Voluntary Stop Eating and Drinking. So that's essentially what a death fast is. In some religions, they use that as a spiritual practice at the end of life to just cleanse themselves, cleanse their soul of any desires and get ready for what happens after.
Fasting is common in many religious, to cleanse yourself, not, in all situations.
Most people, when they're in hospital, in the last few days, they will actually naturally stop eating and drinking. It's just a sign that somebody is dying, that they will stop being hungry. So she just started that whole process more consciously before. And I really like that there are 5 criteria that are mentioned when somebody is allowed to do a death fast. Because the first criteria is, have you fully lived? Like, can you say, hand on your heart, I've lived fully and I've enjoyed every minute and I'm full. My heart is full, I'm ready to go. Yeah, that's criteria number 1. The second thing is, do you have no more purpose or desire left? And of course there are some people like David Attenborough who still is driven by a purpose to save this planet. So he's gonna get a lot older than most people. But not everyone has that drive and that desire and that passion and that purpose still left. So the second one is, do you have a desire or purpose left? Third one is, are your affairs in order? Are there any more responsibilities left in this life, or is everything handled? If you've handled everything, that's a tick. You have permission to go, kind of thing, right? And the fourth thing is your body that old or that unwell that you can't experience the joys in life? Whatever the joys in life are for the person, like they will be different for different people. For my mum, who was super active all of her life, when she couldn't be active anymore, that was really hard. 6 months earlier, she was still going for walks 2 hours a day. She was still working in the garden 3 hours a day, and she couldn't do those things anymore. And they were the biggest things that gave her joy. And so when you lose the confidence to do that, when you feel like, I'm concerned that I'll trip over and break something, I don't want to end up in hospital where they'll do everything possible to keep me alive. And the 5th one I've already mentioned is having everyone involved and have their blessing. 5 very simple principles, and if you can tick those, I think then you're ready to complete this human experience.
Do you think her decision was influenced by the fact, her being a clinician herself, seeing what people went through, and I suppose on a broader perspective, the medical system doesn't particularly deal with death in an ideal way. It's about saving lives at all costs.
Well, that's true. And that's the oath that they're sworn. We can't blame them for doing their job. I just have an issue when it becomes more important than the individual's autonomy and the individual's quality of life. And so my mum's had the experience of my dad being revived when he died on the operating table, despite having a living will that was overriding individual autonomy. That was not okay. She got more and more cynical about the medical profession because she's grown up with a mother who was a doctor, with a father who was a doctor, and they were on the border of the Czech Republic in a tiny little village, a few hundred people that lived there. And so the father had to go to all the other villages around to have enough patients that they could survive. But because they was such a remote practice, they had to do everything. And my mum helped out in the practice, and she had to learn to see the whole person. He says, medicine today has become so specialized. Everyone's a specialist and tries to have the maximum tests that they can do for that specialty, and sometimes forget to see the whole picture. And that was her biggest criticism of medicine today.
Now, tell me about both your and her spiritual belief system.
Well, I've grown up Protestant, but I've never really believed in the institution. And I explored a lot of the Eastern philosophies and met a yogi in Japan who taught me to meditate. And in my first meditation, I had such an out there experience that I experienced myself as not as this body. So I experienced myself without it, just as an energy form, which from that moment on, I was absolutely certain that I am not this body. I am an energy form that lives in this body and experiences life through this body. And that means that at the end of life, I will go back to my unlimited form. Call it life force, call it soul, call it whatever you will. But I will go back to that and I'll leave the body behind. So that's the belief I have about who we are. And it's not attached to any particular religion. In that first meditation, they gave us a really beautiful picture of a tree, and the tree has grown from a seed, and in the seed the whole tree is already in the seed. So we know that there are going to be different branches, and the way the picture worked is that at every branch there is somebody trying to explain that seed to that branch of people so they can understand the seed. And that's how the different religions happen. So on that tree we have all the different religions, and they all form part of that tree. It's a very diverse tree. And the problem becomes when we've cut off the tree from the seed. I just love that image because at the end of the day we're all trying to interpret the seed for the people so they can understand.
What about your mother's spiritual side?
Well, she was connected to nature. She left the church because she also didn't go there, but she believed that there was a bigger power. She was interested in Eastern philosophies as well.
Was she a meditator?
She did towards the end. She did a lot of meditation to get out of the pains that she had, to overcome her pain and deal with the pain.
One of the things that I found challenging in the book was the concept of the fast and witnessing the fast. How was that?
We were just hanging out. It didn't feel like she was fasting. She wasn't hungry. I could eat next to her and she wasn't hungry. The hunger was never the issue, just drinking. That was more challenging. And I think in terms of drinking, when we did our research, it said it takes between 7 days to 21 days. But we didn't know really what the influencing factors were. But it must be the amount of fluid that you consume. And so the journey takes as little or as much time as it takes. There's no particular end point. And at some point you have to let go of the expectation as to when it happens. Because it'll happen. You're moving towards it, and things happened in the process.
Like what?
Well, there were waves of emotions that came and went. We could laugh in 1 minute and then she would be in tears. And I go, well, what's going on? What's behind all of that? Because my concept was, if you want to rest in peace, we need to get you to peace while you're alive. And if there are any unresolved emotions, be that sadness or anger or anything like that, I want to know what it's about. And what do we need to do in regards to that relationship or that issue so that you can get to a place of acceptance, to a place of gratitude even, or forgiveness, so that you can be complete. Like for some things we needed to organize another meeting, a phone call, needed to write a letter or send some flowers, different things that happened. And there were also random things that happened, like a friend who was one of her best friends that she had been estranged with for years, out of the blue, just called in that time. Nobody told her, but it just happened. And they had this long conversation where they shared what they meant to each other, and they both had tears and cried, and it was an hour-long conversation. But it was a healing moment for that relationship. And then that was complete. It was just a beautiful thing. And they couldn't have planned it better, but it needed that time. The longer it went, the more grateful she became about having chosen that path, and the more at peace she became. And the other interesting thing, we had a conversation in the beginning once where she said, I am so ready to let go, but I have no clue what to let go of. What does it actually mean? And I didn't have an answer for that either. But now, having written the book, I can see all the different layers that she was letting go of, be that layers of identity, be that habits, be that skills, be that programs, be that certain tastes, be that different things. She was just letting things go. Then one day she said, I can't do Sudoku anymore. I mean, I look at this and sure, I would have been able to handle this yesterday, and today I look at this and as if it's the first time. So I'm not doing that anymore. When she stopped reading, I read to her. I read her stories. There was just this beautiful, gentle process of letting go of different things that just went closer and closer to the end. Yeah. Letting go of expectations, the expectation of timing, of how it was going to happen. Letting go of control of the body. We are trained to have control as babies. We are potty trained and we learn to be in control. And then to let that go at the end of life, that was her biggest challenge. She was so fiercely independent. She wanted to get it all sorted all the way to the end.
So I think one of the most beautiful things in the book is your reaction to what she was going through. Was it early on that you said, I'm just going to let this process take its place and be open to it?
You have to, because no death is the same. And I think you can prepare as much as you want for that process. You can read as much research as you want. It's always an experience that is documented. I've experienced a lot of unknowns in my life because I've built businesses in different countries. I've had to deal with unknowns, and you can deal with an unknown by being scared of it. But when you're scared of it, you shut down, you're tense, and you're not accessing your intuition and your flow. And so I've always learned that I work best with the unknown if I am open to it and I am curious about it and I'm willing to learn something. And I trust that whatever answer needs to come will come in the moment that I need it. So I reacted spontaneously. Every day I had, in terms of my energy management, I went out for a walk for an hour and I connected with nature and I recharged my batteries so I could come home and be fully present again. And one time she had watched a program and people were toasting something. And she was like, oh, I would so love to have another toast. And I said, okay, let me just get some champagne and we'll figure out a way. And at the time, because the not drinking makes your gum really dry, and so we had different methods to moisten the gum. And one of the methods was we had a little sprayer where you can just have a little bit of mist in your mouth. And I thought, I'll just take a bit of champagne, put it into the sprayer, and she can have some sprays of champagne, and I'll drink it, you know. And so we had a cheers, and she just loved that. And we did it with a whole lot of. She said, "Oh, just the taste of coffee one more time." And so we did the same with coffee, and then she wanted to have her favorite soup, and just happened to coincide with the day where I was going to actually eat that soup. So I said, perfect. But I was trying to roll with whatever she gave me and whatever happened and be spontaneous and fun about it. It was her journey. And there was also a moment where I thought it was after a particular Sunday where she had seen the kids for the third time, because one of these emotions was just the fact that I will never see your kids again is doing my head in right now. And so I said, well, we'll organize that they come again and you can hang out with them all day. And so they came. The kids grew up in Australia. And my mum was in Switzerland. So we sent them a whole lot of digital photos, and she had all printed them out to her own album that she continuously looked at. That I'd never seen those albums, neither had the kids. So that day we just went through all these albums and we looked at old memories and remembered chasing seagulls at Bondi Beach, eating fish and chips and things like that. And she cracked up laughing because she had so much fun in that day, or riding the surfboard. There were all these memories that she's had. The kids were great. They were really lighthearted about it. And at the end of that, that was the first time where she didn't cry after they left. So she was really at a point where she's like, I'm done. I'm good with that topic as well now. And I thought, if ever there is a point in time where it would be perfect for her to go, that would be today. And the next morning I heard her breathe and I thought, what else do I need to do, right? And I realized in that moment that I actually don't need to do anything. I just need to be present with her. It's her journey, and it'll be whatever twists and turns and whatever is still to come. I just needed to let go of my expectation that I had to do anything, my expectation when it was going to happen and what would be perfect, but just surrender to that. And luckily, I had that experience, because 3 days later, she had her own experience of that, where she was absolutely convinced she wasn't going to wake up. And the night before, she said, I think this is it. And she thanked me for everything I'd done for her, and she said the full speech of closing her life. And the next morning, I woke up and I said, what's that sound? And I just heard her howling. She was crying uncontrollably downstairs. I'm like, what's going on? It's like, I just can't believe I'm still here. It was supposed to take 7 to 21 days, and it's after 21 days. And she was very ambitious in sport and everything. So of course, she would have wanted to be gone at 7 days, right? So it was just a funny moment. And then, well, interesting, you should have that experience. I had that 3 days ago. And you too, you wanted to know what you have to let go of. You have to let go of your expectation when this is happening. Just know you're on the journey, and it will happen when it happens. You can't control that. You have to let go of that. I can now say I've seen the full circle of life. It was special from A to B, really deep connection, and I felt her completeness, and I was also so complete that when she had passed, I have not felt a day of sadness. I just felt light from the moment she went. I also stayed with her for a number of days after she passed. So she stayed in the apartment, and we just cooled the room down, had some candle in her room, and family could come.
I'm sure there are people in the crowd that have questions, so if you have a question, put your hand up.
I'm just intrigued. You said she was a part of VSED in Switzerland for quite a long time. So why did you choose the fast as a way to go as opposed to a quicker way?
Well, the two reasons were, one, in Switzerland, police has to be present to ensure that there is no foul play and to ensure that the person has actually taken the drugs. We don't have the injection in Switzerland. We just have a pill or a drink, or you have to actually, the person has to do it themselves. So I said, I know from exit, those policemen, they are in casual clothes. They are very respectful. And to me, I just don't feel right about having somebody official like that at my own death. To me, that feels like a very private thing to do, and I don't like that idea. The second thing for me is that I don't believe from a spiritual point of view that I want to end life with assistance. I believe, having had the experience of leaving my body in meditation, I believe I can leave when I'm ready. I may assist that by doing a VSED at the time, but for me, I just didn't want assistance. And to her, she's had also questions about the assistance in that regard. And so she said, these are exactly the two reasons why I have doubts. What are my options? And so in that conversation, I then, because she was such a cat lover, I said, well, what do cats do? And she said, well, they go away and hide somewhere and don't eat and drink. And she remembered that our neighbor had done a death fast. And so we went and talked to the daughter of the neighbor, who was a palliative care nurse, how that process was. And she learned from her. I learned from a death doula in Switzerland. I talked to the yogi. We found documentaries and did research. And then she just went, that process sounds a lot more organic and a lot more natural, and I want to do that.
I just have a question about VSED. Was there any point in time where it was going to be medically supervised?
We had a conversation with the GP beforehand, and he had known that she wanted to do exit, and he was supportive of her choice. And he said, I don't think she's going to have any pain. I will prescribe morphine just to help her with the breathing, because the breathing can be uncomfortable. He also recommended to have a call-out nurse that would help with physical hygiene when Mum couldn't do that herself anymore. And we also had a bed in a hospice reserved that was on standby in case I would be too overwhelmed. And my mum initially thought that the last few days she would go to the hospice because she didn't want to burden me. But throughout the process, I checked in with her, do you still want to go to a hospice? And she goes, oh, if I could just be and stay here, I'm totally happy for you to be here.
I know when we're really hungry or thirsty, it is painful. You know, you start to get the growls in your stomach, and the actual process of not drinking and eating, is it a really difficult one to go through?
It was totally smooth. She had a starting date when your family is back from Australia, that's when I'll start. A couple of days beforehand, she had such a massive migraine that she couldn't stomach anything. And she didn't feel hungry. Even before, she was sometimes just cooking a meal because one cooks a meal at 12 o'clock, but not because she was hungry. And so she was relieved that she didn't have to eat. So eating was never the issue, and even when I was next to her and she was never wanting for anything. Drinking was more challenging just because it's not comfortable. And she would just go through days where it would work well and other days where she'd go, really have to try harder tomorrow. Or with the spray bottle, like the intention with the spray bottle was to have just a bit of mist. But I'd walk into the room and she's like, just emptying the whole thing. So I was like, but in that moment, it is her journey, and it's whatever, it is perfect.
Big round of applause for Oliver. A huge thanks to Oliver for generously sharing his time and allowing me to be part of the launch of As She Chose. You'll find links to the book in the show notes, and I highly recommend picking up a copy. Thanks again to the wonderful team at Better Read Than Dead bookstore in Newtown, Sydney for making this event possible. Before we go, Oliver mentioned a bucket list experience that he and his mother were able to complete together.
She was the oldest one in her village to compete in the Engadine Ski Marathon. It's a 42-kilometre cross-country ski marathon in winter, and she got always super excited to participate in that. And when I got back to Switzerland, I picked up cross-country skiing. I hadn't done that before. And by the time my dad passed, I was training to qualify for the elite, to be part of the top 20% of cross-country ski races. And I was in the form of my life, and then due to COVID, the whole thing got cancelled. And I thought, well, bugger it, we'll still go. And I said to my mum, and you're coming with me, because Dad's just passed, but so we need to get you out of the house and into the mountains. And so she absolutely loved being part of that whole energy. And the next morning, the race started, and normally they play Vangelis' Conquest of Paradise as the countdown music. And because the race wasn't happening, I just had my iPhone and I played Conquest of Paradise. So all my mates and my mum were in cross-country ski gear at the starting point, and then off we went. She did 10 kilometers and she was absolutely stoked. She was 82 at the time. and was absolutely stoked that she could do this one more time, and said, and that is the end of my cross-country skiing career.
We've got plenty more coming up in this series of Passing Thoughts, including the return of some of our regular contributors and a few surprise guests. If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell your family and friends about it, and if you have a moment, we'd really appreciate it if you could rate and review us on your favourite podcast platform. As always, thanks to the team from 2RPH and the Wicking Trust for their generous support of this project. I'm Rob Kaldor. Thanks for listening.
This is a Radio 2RPH production.